Amen. Calling the workshop to order. This is our board meeting agenda summary for June 15th. We do have a number of visitors today, so I'm going to read through this. Welcome, citizens of Clay County. I want to take this opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend today's school board workshop. This workshop is our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly among ourselves, make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and the education of our children here in Clay County. There will be an opportunity for the public to ask questions at the end of the workshop presentation. Questions will be allowed. Public comment will not be allowed. If you wish to ask a question, please fill out a comment card. Hand that card to our chief over here, and your participation is welcome. Generally, by the way, in workshops we're a little bit less formal, so if you have questions, I allow, obviously I'm a teacher, former teacher, raise your hand. I'll be happy to call on you, but raise a quiet hand, Mr. Fossa. We don't talk while we raise those hands. Thank you. Mr. Roski, would you lead us, please?
Yes, good morning. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. It's great to see everybody. It's great to have some rain, finally. So today we got a more extensive program for you than in previous board agenda workshops. We have the review of the agenda. We're going to go ahead and skip the item on the insurance and do that right after, because Dr. Levetko is giving a presentation on that at the end. And then we also have a presentation on Synergistics, and then we also have a presentation on the feasibility study for Keystone. So to go over the regular board agenda, first the recognition of our retirees. Got 125 retirees. That's almost 2,900. That's 2,900 years of experience.
Wow.
Nestled between all of them, as you know, each year. That number always amazes me, the number of years of experience. So C1 is the minutes of the workshop and the special meeting on May 25th, the student hearings, and the regular meeting on June 3rd. Without hearing any questions. C2 is the annual membership dues for FADS. The FSB A1 was on last board agenda. So that brings us up to C3. C3 is the Blackboard contract. As you know, Blackboard, this is a renewal of our current contract. That's the program that we use to do robocalls and contact out to parents. Thanks to Ethan and his group, contract is actually $31,000 less than previous years.
Good.
You know, one of the things that today marks the last day of focus is today. As you know, we're moving to Synergy. Remember the presentation that we gave? I'm not sure when that was, a month ago, 2 months ago, maybe it was. So Synergy has a variety of tools that are within that program that are actually saving us expenses on other programs, and this would be one example of that. So that is the Blackboard contract on C3. So C4 is the personnel consent agenda. Of course, we'll review this prior to the actual publishing the agenda 48 hours before. There is one job description in there. It's for a buyer, and a buyer, what's going to happen is we have more projects that are going to be conducted by our operations department. This particular new job would be necessary. So don't know if there's any questions on that one. Number 5 then, daily hours for teachers and students each year. You know, we approve the hours for students and teachers for the next school year. That brings us up to 6, which is the interagency agreement for FLICA. This is a renewal. We've had this program since 2001. Long tradition. There are usually about 300 graduates a year.
And it showed that it's funded from, is it DOE that funds it? Who funds it? Yeah. Is there any additional charge to the district other than FTE for students of ours that would be going?
No.
Good. Okay, thank you.
They pay us $575. So number 7 is the contract between Pace Center for Girls and Clay County School Board. This is a renewal of the previous contract. And their counterpart, AMI for boys, is the next contract.
So with Pace, now that they haven't opened their new facility yet, but will they be able to accommodate more than 50 girls?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have a number of how much?
I don't know, I can call and ask how many.
I talked to Destiny and I can't remember the number that she gave me. It was more, but still, limited, obviously. And unfortunately, they had to move out of their old facility
Right, for 2 months.
for a couple of months before they can move into their new one, so.
So for AMI, just a little update there, we've had a proud tradition with AMI also, and the moving off of the current Clay High school system is Clay High property has always been something that's in flux. So the current plan is they already have a place where they're going, and by the end of the year, which would be
December 31st is my understanding.
they're gonna move.
And Mike Valancourt and the city of Green Cove have been very instrumental in working out a place for them to be, so I appreciate them doing that.
Do you know where they're moving to, or what
Off of
area?
college.
I'm sorry?
One of the buildings off of college.
Yeah.
No, so AMI is
gonna
gonna be
off
close to
college?
Pace. Interesting. I mean,
I think
that's
so.
interesting.
I thought it was
So-
near Mike Valancourt's office.
Yeah,
Did I?
it's down in
Yeah.
Green Cove. What you're thinking of is Pace.
Are you
School for
thinking
of
Girls.
Pace,
On
or-
top
oh,
of
Okay,
okay.
it.
his is near
That's
actually,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're
Mike is right
early-
over here.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Close.
I'll find out, I'll send an email.
Same county.
Right. So that brings,
Close to the center.
That was mean.
Of course, I mean,
You're in the
in
same county.
relationship, yeah. Sorry, Mr. Bosky, we were being naughty.
I understand it's
The teacher
summertime.
over there is being
Yeah.
disruptive.
I'm on summer break.
So number 9 is the interlocal agreement between Rolling Hills and the district. This is to use their pool for the Clay High swim team. It's a pretty standard contract.
And we appreciate it.
Number 10 is 7 Mindsets, which is, been using them for 3 or 4 years now. This is a renewal of that contract. Don't need to tell you that the focus on social emotional learning has increased over the last 5 or 6 years, and this helps us meet the statute involved. Number 11 is Navigate 360. This is a renewal of that contract. There's really 3 topics that by statute we have to cover. One is substance abuse and use, prevention of child trafficking, and mental and emotional health education. You can see that in the middle of the item. And this is the program that enables us to do that and meet those requirements. So then number 12 is the property casualty insurance. We're going to skip that to the end. Dr. Lepko is going to give a presentation. Very brief presentation after that. Number 13 is the uniform pricing for before and after school enrichment programs. Just like previously we did that for summer, this is for the regular school year programs, and the price is included. 14 is proposed allocation changes. You can see those a lot within food services and also within business affairs. 15 is the standard monthly financial report. 16 is budget amendments for this month. 17 is the deletion of certain items report. 18 is the renewal of the bid for the chiller services and ground maintenance. 19 is the bid awarded for milk products, the countywide bid to New Dairy of Florida, Gordon Dairy. 20 is the maintenance agreement for trains, this is a renewal. As you know, HVAC and finding qualified technicians is very challenging. So those 6 schools are under a contract with Train and have been for years, and so this is a continuation of that contract. 21 is the interlocal agreement with Green Cove Springs Police Department. A slight increase in the total cost there. And there are 6 employees, and the cost differential is due to the increase of the cost of the salaries of those individuals involved. Now, 22 is for Orange Park, and there's no increase in cost there for Orange Park, a local with Orange Park Police Department. 23 is Synergistics agreement. You're going to hear a presentation at the end related to Synergistics. To me, it's been a successful program because energy management and the reduction of energy costs is important. It's that hidden cost within the district, and how to keep that down. It requires people to actually focus on that. You know, I don't know about you, but I have 2 boys, and telling them to turn the lights off might seem like a basic thing, but imagine a district as immense as ours, and for employees and others to focus on energy costs and energy savings. It's a pretty huge deal, and you're going to hear a presentation at the end on that particular topic.
I'm grateful that we haven't had any further complaints about the AC.
Well,
They
you know what?
seem to have worked that out.
I think that was the beginning of that contract, if I remember those meetings.
Yeah.
There were some entertaining
Well,
ones
and
there.
with reason. I mean, there are custodians working in, after hours.
But we seem to have made those adjustments to deal with the personnel needs. So 24 is New School R naming committee. You know, by policy, that's how the naming committee would work. So the purpose of the naming committee is to come up with 5 names, of which it's submitted to the superintendent. I'm going to give you at least 3 names, then you're going to make a decision on what to name the new school. So exciting stuff.
And how did we choose the people to be on this committee? Did we put something out there and let people request to be on it, or?
I think, in board policy, it's delineated as to who serves on there as far as the criteria for the people involved. Bryce, how did we choose the individual involved?
So this is actually kind of mirrored exactly what we did for Discovery Oaks. And what I did was, I had to have 2 members from the community, so I reached out to the schools that would be affected. So we reached out to Lake Asbury Elementary and reached out to Patterson because that's would be most of them. So we had an administrator and also their SAC committee chairs. And then I reached out to the city of Green Cove because it was nearby, and then Mr. Kennedy went ahead and nominated Van Royal. And also we asked for another person that would be in the area. So those were the names that I put forward.
And I was just curious if there was a process that people went through to be on that naming committee, or if, we just reached out and chose through.
Of course, I'm not trying to influence the committee, but you've seen from recent events that the naming of, we have a tradition of naming schools after geographic areas rather than individual people, and that's probably a wise direction.
Score 1 for us.
It's a wise direction to take.
We're going to have Green Grass Academy.
The school.
We hope green grass is not
Ours
too
a
tall.
nice name. Ours a very nice name, yeah.
PS 140 like they do in the
The
big.
location of that school is a pasture, like a dairy.
I know.
So like.
It's also
And
near,
it's
it's
by
also near
Rosemary Hill.
Rosemary Hill, and I was thinking Rosemary
Actually, you wanna name it after the area.
But what's the development going in there? You know how
Magnolia West is out there, Rolling Hills is
so
out
maybe
there.
they'll come up with something that'll be like Magnolia Elementary.
Yeah.
They'll come up with something good. They always
I'm
are.
confident the committee will come up with
Yeah.
some great ideas for us
So
moving forward.
Green grass.
Not cow patio, but.
Horse apple? No.
Nothing to do with the dump.
Raccoon as your.
So I can tell we're a little froggy in the summertime.
Because we're starting early.
That's right.
They're moving back later.
So 25 is the change order for Tynes Elementary, and this is a direct purchase, so it actually saves $441,000 for the district, so that's a positive. 26 is pre-qualification for contractors. 27 is the 5-year educational plant survey. So if you looked at this, it's a pretty huge document. So this is not to be confused with the educational facility plan, which is the yearly updated plan. This is one, and we actually have representatives here, I believe, right, from the state, in case there's questions on this document. But you can see a pretty in-depth study of all of our facilities, which has to be completed every 5 years. So 16 was the last time this document was done.
And Bryce provided me with a copy of the recommendation, not the whole 200 and something, but the recommendation part of it.
I can get you that if
So
you want.
thank you, I appreciate it. You know, I was reading through it, and it's just, I like to go back and forth and look, so I don't like reading something that big on the computer, you know.
Oh, I don't blame
And
you.
I also do want to print it on, you know, figure you have
Anybody else wants
a more,
copies?
you know, efficient printer than what I've got at home.
That's a recommendation. Does it, and I have also not gone into the entire detail, does it give a comparison from 16 to now as to the number of portables? Or anything of that nature? Okay.
No, but we could probably get
It lists the
a
number
list
of
of
Excuse
that.
me, relocatables. Mhm.
Right.
It doesn't do a comparison of where it was.
It doesn't, okay.
Well, we've reduced several hundred already, right? Weren't we at like 1,100 and now we're down to maybe 9?
Okay.
Yeah, only 500.
I know we're still number 3 in the state for the amount of portables we have, which, you know, but we are reducing them, so that's a good sign.
So we're up to D1, which is appointment of one member to the
Can
certain
I,
value
excuse me, can I
adjustment.
go back to that?
Sure.
Mary, it does tell in here, under each school, how many portables they'll be reducing over the next,
Cool.
you know, so many years. And usually, most of the numbers are by 2026. It
Right,
would be
for the
10
next
from
5
this
years,
or 5
right,
from that,
right.
so it does tell in that, sorry.
No, thank you.
So D1, I know you're all going to be jumping at the chance to serve on the Value Adjustment Board. Look forward to that discussion.
I did talk to Joe Wiggins, and he would be happy to stay on it.
Awesome, thank you.
So we have our citizen.
Great.
So the advocacy, D2 is the Advocacy Committee alternate.
Represent, that's from FSBA. I've been the representative for the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years.
It was me
And
before
you've been
that,
the,
6 or so.
right, the alternate. So if anyone is interested in stepping up to that, let me know. Bring it up at the next meeting or whenever.
And that brings us to, there's no special action, so D4 is the SRF Casualty Safety Sanitation Relocatable Fire Inspections. Every year, you know that we do this, we find various things that need to be corrected. Those things are corrected. There's nothing of note that can't be corrected when it comes to a safety. As a side note, I remember being a teacher, and then when I would see, at that time, I think it was Todd Sweatland walking around, as a teacher, I knew that my extension cords were then moved. I'm going to make that confession today. To all of you, I moved the extension cords were moved. So, good news is there was nothing that can't be fixed and adjusted. That brings you through the agenda, but now we're going to go back to the insurance part and Dr. Legutko.
Okay. All right, so this is going to be a brief presentation of our annual renewal for the, our liability, overall coverage for liability, workers' comp, and some of the other items under an umbrella package for the school board. As you can see on the agenda item, typically, we would have a PowerPoint, there's no PowerPoint presentation. You'll have the agenda item, and of course, you have a little bit of explanation as to the increases, why we have increases, why there's the increases associated with this renewal. And that's what I'm really gonna go over real briefly. As you can see, we have a third-party adjuster that actually works, a third-party administrator, I'm sorry. We have a third-party administrator that works with us, that annually goes out to the market to acquire the best service for a reasonable price. As you know, our third-party administrator is Arthur Gallagher. and they've been with us for at least 15 years. And and over the 15 years, I feel as an administrator working with them, they have done a really good job in ensuring that we have the best policy that we can afford. Does that make sense? Can afford. So with that, they did go out to the market. They went to approximately 50 vendors. Out of the 50, they only received 15 quotes, which is pretty sad because, and 36 of the markets declined. So we didn't really have a whole lot of folks wanting to bid on our services or bid on providing support for us, insurance coverage, I should say, quotes. So, what I do know is that the renewal prices is competitive. The market was very, let's see, it was tightened. What is it, tightened?
Yeah.
I would say it wasn't very good out there, let me put it that way. So what we have is the best that we can get for the price. And I believe it's favorable. In comparison to last year, there is an increase of about 10%. I should say no more than 10%. It could change between now and when we actually sign the renewal. But the increase is about 10%. It's about it's about 117,000 more than last year. The total premium is about $1.3 million. That premium covers our overall school package, which includes workers' comp, property insurance, boiler and machinery, storage tank, active assailant, student accident, cyber risk, and terrorist risk insurance. So there's several subcategories within the overall school board package.
Dr. Legucco, do our levels stay the same, our level of coverage?
Right. Well, what you have in your packet, or what you have in the agenda is a comparison. There are some options. There's the renewal, there's option 1, option 2, and option 3. Option 1 is actually increasing our retentions. It's several retentions, as you can see. Do you mind if I go down here and point at the, as you can see on option 1, down here, you can see where, where's the?
That's our enrollment, option 1's over 1.
Yeah, this
There you
one,
go.
I'm sorry, option 2. This is the one that we are recommending, but option 2, you can see that some of our, the employee benefits liability, our retention would go up to 200. Law enforcement will go up to 200. Property will go up to 200. So within the package, there are certain areas that we can increase the retention and of course pay a lesser amount in premium, which I don't recommend, number one. I think we have a really solid packet right here based on our experience of what we've experienced, based on experience from the prior years. Option 3 is pretty much the same as well, but I believe there's some certain areas that they're increasing. I think errors and omission, they're reducing it, and that's of course the reason for the lesser amount, the lesser premium. So, I mean, so some of these packages, it's just different pieces of it, and what we did is we looked at all of the different categories and looked at our past experience, and I would, our recommendation would be for option 1. Now, some of the increases, for instance, the cyber, you can see that that's going to go up. It's because of the market and what has recently happened out there in at school boards and whatnot, that of course hackers and those types of things taking over our technology systems, I guess. So, because of the market, there has been an increase there. Let's see, the storage tank, it's a huge increase, but the reason for that is that we are in the process of removing our underground tanks, and I believe we're adding above brown tanks, however, it will take some time to do that. We did go out to the market, and there was only one vendor that was willing to insure us during that period. That's the reason why there was an increase. So because of that, you know, we've got to pay the price. So, let's see, what else? Excess workers' comp and our property, obviously, that's the excess workers' comp is due to the fact that we've had some really costly cases just recently, and therefore, because of that and because of the experience, there will be an increase to the premium for that service. So, let's see what else I need to say.
Just a comment on cyber risk. There was one of the, when we were at FSBA this last week, one of the other school board members from another county said that their cyber risk cost had tripled
That's right.
That's right.
in the amount. And I thought, whoa, and thinking back to what we had approved last month, as well as what we were going to be looking at in the insurance, I thought that in and of itself could have been a huge expense increase. So,
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is
our
not,
premium.
that's not bad
Right,
at
no,
all.
our premium went up by $7,939, and again, it is reflective of the hardening market that they said, that, you know, that's out there, and we've been fortunate, ours isn't as significant as some of the other school boards that's out there. So, student accident remained the same. The student accident remained the same. I believe during COVID, we did get a credit for that during the year, but it did not go up as the original quote from last year to this year, so it remained the same. Again, I told you about the storage tank. We're removing 5 underground storage tanks at 2 of our locations, and only one carrier quoted us, and that was the quote. So hopefully at the end, once for next year, that premium will go down once the tanks are in place. Let's see. I think that's it, just basically looking at 2 and 3 and 4.
And just clarification, when we're looking at this insurance and the fact that we use Arthur Gallagher and the fact that we do this pretty extensively every year, this is by statute, is that correct?
Our statute requires that
This
we
is-
maintain this type of coverage.
So it's not a choice on our part, it is a I mean, it would be obviously for many of these, but this is also, all of these are required. It's sort of like,
Oh,
when you're
yes.
required to have auto insurance, you have to have certain things within the auto insurance. So within this insurance, we are required as a school district to have these coverages.
Absolutely. We would be violating Florida statute, and we would not be, this is a business that we're operating, so we have to maintain reasonable insurance or coverage to protect our employees, our buildings, our whatever we, you know, all of the things that we do experience in running a school system, so, or a business, I should say, running a business. So, in summary, I believe this renewal is favorable considering what the market looks like right now. It's a 10% increase, and I believe the superintendent's recommendation will be for option number 1, which is up there. Any questions? And of course, if you have any questions regarding the details of our policy, by all means, please call me. Please, you know, you have, I can get a representative with Arthur Gallagher to present to you all in detail as to what, you know, this policy includes, so.
Do we need to add option 1 to the recommendation on the agenda?
I did, didn't I?
I don't say it, to obtain school board approval of the district's property liability and active sale and insurance renewal policies as presented, under recommendation.
Oh, okay,
So I'm
yeah,
thinking,
thank you.
Mr. Bickner, does it need to say option 1?
It does
Yes.
under expected outcomes.
Yeah, but I think it needs to be under, he's
Recommendation.
recommended we vote for option 1.
Okay. Yeah, I believe we will add that, thank you very much.
I'm glad you clarified the storage tanks, because I was wondering why.
Mhm.
That
Oh,
makes
yeah.
perfect
That way
sense.
on it.
Yep.
Are the older storage tanks deteriorating, or,
Yes, yeah.
which I would assume that, yeah.
And we'll bring them above ground, new tanks.
We've had trouble getting coverage every single year for that, for those two locations, so.
And this year was extremely
Yeah,
difficult.
this year they said no, if we weren't removing them, we wouldn't have coverage
Oh,
Yeah.
at all.
so it's important.
After 30 years, tanks
Yes,
deteriorate to the point where they become too rusty, and then
Mhm.
liability becomes you're leaking something in the ground.
into the ground, that's right.
Very good, thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna transition on to Synergistics, the operations.
Oh, man. Give Bonnie a second to find it.
Please.
Quick question, but who is the parent company for Synergistics?
I've only known Synergistic
So
Incorporated.
they should be, okay.
I don't know if there's a parent company, I'm not aware of it. You got it? All right, presentation on Synergistic. Next slide. So 2 years ago, when we disbanded admin operations, we moved Synergistic over to maintenance. At that time, we had developed our own in-house service for dealing with their air conditioning systems, water, all that kind of stuff. We're controlled, we call them environmental controls. So once we moved them in there, we really took what was a mess, as some of the board members had alluded to earlier, that we were bumping heads really bad as we tried to change the lifestyles at the schools to compensate. We would move them into our world and make it a little easier for them. So they do I do a lot for us now. So we have 2 people that are assigned to us and a third person that's on a fly as we need them to come in and help with the audits, also help with the software. They do off-hour online auditing. This is what they do. So they wait for the schools to go to sleep, and then they're out and about. The police department finds them regularly out there, and all hours of the night, and that makes me worry a little bit, but they're out there checking on portables, they check on the building. If there's a fan running, they ask why. And then in the morning, they come back to maintenance, and we talk about what was happening the night before. And we find a lot of problems happen in the logic of the HVAC systems that are operating out there. They're very large systems, so they can be corrupted by a lightning strike or a power surge or something like that. And it does affect them to the point where maybe they have a large motor running when it should be running. And we wouldn't know that during the day because it's still running during the day. So after hours, this is what they're doing, and they're catching a lot of this. The other thing that they do that you don't hear a lot about is they manage our water. We have a lot of old water systems, and when we break a water line, especially like a 2-inch main or something that comes into the school, there are some schools you will not see it for days. Ridgeview High School is one of them. Lake Asbury area is another. That we call a sugar sand is so porous that the water literally never comes to the surface. And so you have to try and find that leak. And they're very helpful with that, along with the city and the county's CCUA organization. They provide real-time assessment of humidity. I get a lot of complaints. Trying to appease 4,000 teachers and 37,000 students is not an easy task. So some people are more comfortable than others, and ones that aren't comfortable, I usually know about it. And it usually revolves around humidity. And so they help us with that because we can manage humidity to some extent in most of our systems. Proprietary software, this is where they really make their money for us. They have GreenX, which is a proprietary software to them. It's in-house. I don't have access to it. I can look at it and marvel at the numbers, but they generate those numbers. The other one is Energy Cap, which I basically, the school board owns that one, and we get to manage that. That is a cloud-based software, so we can see that, and they help us with that as well. We have established a really strong relationship with all the utility providers. Roseanne is the lead in the Synergist group. She's there. If she sees, we have a water meter, we think we have a water leak, and we look at the bill every month, and if we have a spike in water usage or in electric usage, first thing we will look at is what we call a tattletale on meters at the school level. We get either the county or the city who owns the service. They open it up and they look, and there's a little tattletale in there. Most of the homes have it now. You can see it, little thing that spins around, and they help us with that. We see it, and we move on and we try to find that leak. And sometimes we have to dedicate an entire maintenance team over a day or two to actually locate a leak. Other than that, we've had times in the past, before we had Synergist, we wouldn't know we had a leak for months until we saw the bills that were showing up, and they would get pretty expensive. So they've been really good at catching some of that. We incorporated them in our Building Automation Work Center. Everybody hears about Buck. He is the lead in that work center. He is one of the go-to people along with Roseanne. So after hours, if we have scheduling problems or you want to schedule something, the first call is to go to Roseanne, and she will schedule it for whatever senior staff is signed up for that school to do that. If there's an event that's unannounced on the weekends, we run into this last weekend where we had a couple unannounced projects that was going on and no one knew about it. Give her a call, she willy-nilly turns it on and makes it work. I have the ability to do it, but I have to come into school, and the only other person he's on leave right now. So I have two people that are capable of turning them on and off at any time from anywhere in the county. They can log in on their VPN and have that, and that works out real well for us. So that's a nutshell of how they've been incorporated into our world. Now we get into renewal of the contract.
Phil, let me ask a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't you think we should have a school district employee that has access, at any time to turn it on? I mean, I remember last year, Orange Park High School had an event on a Saturday, and there was no air on at all.
Well,
And
most
you
staff-
paid for it.
Yes, most staff has the ability to do that, senior staff, but it's easier to call in the Synergist or call maintenance, and we get it turned on.
Okay.
So I have to come into the school to do it, because my VPN there's a little bit of trouble with that in my house, so I have to come into work and do it. But Buck has a wireless, he can talk right through it and work it, and Synergist has it. So there's 3 people that are capable of doing it, plus senior staff should be able to handle scheduling in their own house. Now, we got a transition right now of staff, so we'll be training a lot of people this summer on how to use that system.
Thank you.
Answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're down to 3 options, really. Synergist, we'll talk about that and go into the next fold. Next slide, Bonnie. If we go with the first option, that's the renewal of the contract. It's a 3-year renewal, $324,000 over 3 years, $27,000 a month, a year. And you basically get a 50% discount of what they were doing prior to us to this level. The last 5 years, it was 50% more cost-wise. So what they did initially is they created a database to work with. So they did an assessment of where we were, and they worked us down from that number to where we are today. I think we've saved close to $6 million over the last 5 years. This is a 36-month extension on the agreement, starts July 1st. Projected net savings for the next 3 years, if we stay with this contract over 3 years, it'll be about $3,284,000. Now, we always say, oh, you don't ever see those dollars because it gets folded back into general fund. General fund doesn't get taxed with that extra money. That's still there. We have access to the proprietary software as long as they're employed with us. We can talk with them on it. The team continues to work off hours on the auditing of all the buildings. And if we have a problem with the contract, we don't like it, we have the option 90-day cancel. That's option 1. We go to option 2. So we wanted to say we don't want to renew this contract. That's okay, I don't have a problem with that. But we're going to have to grow in-house. For us to grow in-house, we'd have to probably have 3 coordinators, probably in the step 5 area, because we're trying to attract people who know what they're doing, like Roseanne. It's a niche out there for automation controls. So that gives you an idea where we're at on that. We would need 3 of them, because that's basically what we do every day. We work with 3 of their people. And the yearly cost, we would go about $24,000 a month, yearly cost about $297. The total breakdown will include, because they're working after hours, so we can't have an hourly wage person do that, because then we'd have to have stipends and overtime, and that gets a little bit monotonous when you're working weekends, holidays, and things like that. They each need a vehicle, gas out the tank, run about $2.40 a gallon, kind of give you an idea, break it down of how that cost is if we were just to do away with them. I have another option that I'd like to throw at you. Option 3, just do away with the service. Just talk, hey, just do away with them, we don't need them. And you have an immediate savings, probably in the neighborhood of a couple $1 million over 3 years, or at least $27,000 a month. The problem with that process is everything you've learned over the last 5 years is going to get unlearned, because nature has a history of repeating itself. It will go back to what it used to do. And I know turning the lights off is an issue, but when you turn a light off on a switch that handles an air handler, it's probably 60, 70 horsepower, and it weighs a ton, and it's spinning, you shut it off, that's a cost. And so the lights are not my real expense, it's those mechanicals that's driving the cost of why we have why our electric bills were so high. They were running 24/7. So if we went with this route, we would fall back on maintenance, senior staff, and anybody else involved. That would be my automation team to manage this as best they could. And we're barely keeping our head above water what we got now. So if that's Synergistics is really a big part of our team right now. So if we did away with them, we'd have to either grow them or just go back to the way we were. And the way we were wasn't exactly that good. Some of us can talk about it. Portables were running 24/7, and stuff was growing in those portables like you wouldn't believe. We were having issues with that. We were having issues with sweating walls in the schools because the temperatures were set too low. If somebody complained, well, you just lower the temperature. We would have premature failures because we were running systems so often, so long, that we were burning motors up. So this has come a full circle for us. I had my doubts when they first started, like everybody else did. Like I said, who do I need to tell me to turn the lights out? But in the long term, they've proved themselves, and they've done a good job, especially since we've integrated into maintenance. So there's no pushing and shoving, we all work as a team. So my recommendation to the superintendent would be, we'd stay with option 1, which would just renew the contract. 3 more years, if we're not happy with them at the end of 3 years, maybe by that time, we'll have figured out how to get more people and grow our own internal organization. And maybe a possibility down the road. Questions?
I never thought, as a teacher, I would say that I was in favor of Synergistics. I'll be honest with you. Hated it, absolutely hated it when it first came out, because we were going through so many bumps in that road. But having heard what you've said about, it's not just turning off the lights, it's about the basic, the structure of everything that we do. And after hearing about so many different problems through buildings, etc., and how this has helped solve some of those problems as well. I mean, the whole water aspect of it, I had no clue about. So,
one of the things you'd like to learn, we went through this weekend to give you an idea of what's happening. We had a teacher, high school, wanted her room, because she wasn't done doing what she needed to do. So staff had asked me in maintenance to turn on the air conditioner for one room. All right, so let me tell you how that works. In a high school, which has a big chiller unit and a water tower cooler, you just don't turn on the bar unit on the wall and it cools that room. You're turning on a chiller package, which is probably pulling 60, 70 amps all day long on 3 phases. Then you're turning on the air handlers that drive that. You're turning on the water pumps that pump the cold water from the chiller to the air handler unit. Then the air handler unit pumps it into the room. Then it all comes back with all that heat and goes through the tower, which has pumps and motors and spins, all that from one room. So, we allow that to happen this weekend because we weren't sure what they were doing, But come Monday morning, talk with staff, and say, okay, this is what you're doing, and you need to change that behavior. And it's okay, we don't need to do that anymore, so we don't do it. And that's all it is a behavioral change. That's probably why we hit all the bumps, is because we like coming in the morning and the air is cold. We like going home at the end of the day knowing that when we have a consistent somewhere in the building, and we can't afford that.
The other, in answer to your comment, Ms. Karakas, about that Saturday, the other side of this is also, and I think that, I can't speak for every school, but I think the communication within the school itself has improved a lot though too. Because people are aware that things shut down now on weekends. We've had that experience how many times at the TTC, you know, or wherever. And so I think that's critical, and that's probably in your bailiwick, as you train principals and as principals now, we've got some movement, so as those principals get into those new schools, they have to be aware that that communication, bless you, is critical to everybody, to all of the activities that go on in these schools on weekends and in the evenings, and those teachers that stay late, and those teachers that do like to go in on Saturday, so.
One of the things we consistently hear though after every summer is teachers come back to their classroom and their class library material.
The
and
humidity
Yes,
humidity
yes.
is ruined.
We have some schools that do have high humidity in the classrooms, and we are doing what we can. Some of the units don't remove the moisture to the level that we really need at the media center level. And those are the older schools. We run that into a problem with. We see a lot of it at Middlebury Elementary. I see a lot of it. We even have it at some of it at Fleming Island
Clay Hill.
Elementary. Clay Hill Elementary has. What we've been doing in there is we've been putting in very large dehumidifiers and piping the drainage to go through the wall on the outside, so they run continuously. We've done quite a bit. Like I say, we continue to do more as we continue to buy units to do that with. That helps them out.
In most cases, that's, you know, purchased by our teachers, it's their personal supply for our students to use, so we hate to see any of the supplies ruined, so thank you.
Well, I think too, as we add new schools and there are more high-tech and all of that, this is all, you know, gonna be more advantageous to have this kind of a system as well.
Right. So a barred unit, a wall mount, doesn't dehumidify very well. It's designed to give you cold air. And it will, if you have a very high moisture content in the air, because of the air exchange that has to happen, you're going to get some of that moisture from the outside is going to come inside. It's inevitable. And so we try to manage that as best we can, especially in the media centers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn.
So your recommendation is to renew?
Yes, it is. You know, I just know that human habit is to go back to the old way of doing things unless somebody's monitoring it, and that's a group that's dedicated solely to that. You know, a concern would be that if we tried to grow it in-house, that would be one more thing that you're adding on to somebody.
And it wasn't that much of a cost savings.
Yeah, and so the effectiveness of doing that wouldn't be there. All right, so now let's transition. We have a presentation for you from Casper and Associates. We have the principal architect from Casper and Associates here, Jared Casper. Hello, sir. How are you?
Doing excellent, thank you.
Okay, I don't know where you want to stand.
I'd
I
like to
assume
go
right
here.
up there would be probably the best
I'll
spot.
follow the lead previous.
And you take it away whenever you're ready.
Excellent.
So we just have the two documents. We have the actual report and the
Yes, sir.
presentation.
This loose document is really the PowerPoint that we're presenting here, and then the bound document is the official report.
Thank you for the handout.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'm
You're
a
welcome.
stickler for handouts.
We actually talked about that.
About me?
Yes,
Mrs. Carrick
we
was
said
gonna
make
say,
sure the
"Where's
handouts are
handout?"
Yes, we covered it.
And I was just thinking it with Phil, like.
Feel free to flip through that.
Not bring our hand out.
Again, everything that we'll be
I'm a
presenting
pet peeve.
today is in that booklet and then more detailed in the report. So my name is Eric Casper. I'm an architect here in town, founder of Casper Architects. We've been in business for about 17 years. I am a product of the Clay County School District, of Montclair Elementary, Lakeside Middle School, and then Orange Park High, which is where I met my wonderful wife in 29 years. We're still married, so excited to be here. This is Lauren Schwing. She's an architect in our office as well, and she's put together the majority of this report. So I'm going to kind of go through a couple and 4 big things. One, I'm going to talk about description of why we're here and what the feasibility study is. 2, I'm going to discuss the current facilities at Keystone, the elementary and the combination school. And then we're going to talk about the site issues, storm drains, sewers, and parking. And then finally, we'll evaluate 2 different scenarios. And in those scenarios, it is one, putting an elementary school, proposed elementary school on a vacant 9-acre parcel, and the other is putting that elementary school on the existing campus. And then all these proposals, what we're looking at is the state requirements for a full facility. So if the population gets to the thresholds, and then if it's a full facility, that's the evaluations we're showing. And then we'll end with a conclusion. So I'll go ahead and jump into that. Who's running the slide? Awesome. All right, just want to know who I need to look at. All right, so back one. I think, yeah. All right, so as I mentioned, we are a third party. We're an independent architect here in town. We've been hired to do a feasibility of putting a new elementary school on a vacant 9-acre parcel, which is known as McDavid Park. And if that didn't work or wasn't quite feasible, we're presenting an alternate option of where the school could go. Next. So a feasibility study defined by the state is an examination and analysis of the information, so we're going to look at everything that's there, of a projected facility, this is the elementary, and to determine whether it is reasonable or practical. And so in this analysis, we're going to look at, is it reasonable, is it practical, and we're evaluating this new school, how it would fit on the current property that is owned by Clay County. And then in all of it, as I mentioned, we're looking at the long-range plans as well, if the population grows and the other junior high or high reach its threshold. Next. All right, so this I think is important as well. A feasibility study is not a recommendation of whether this school should be built. It's a feasibility of, is it feasible? A feasibility study is not a master plan. So what we're showing you is not a perfect layout as to how everything is going to be configured, where the parking is, sidewalk, but it's just representative of all the pieces. A feasibility study is not a complete financial analysis. We're looking at only the cost of the building and the site constraints on this property. We're not looking at outside cost analysis. We're also, this feasibility study is not an analysis of any consideration of any district-wide other needs. We're just focused on this one piece. And this feasibility study is not a recommendation of when anything should be built. It's just, the question is it feasible on this site or next site? All right, so now the current property that is owned. So flip the next one. So there's 6 separate parcels. If you're familiar with it, they're all bounded by various roads, bisected by some roads, but all these parcels are owned by the Clay County School District. Next. And then, so if we rotate this around, this is orientation we're going to be looking at from now on. So it's a total of 68 acres, which is pretty nice. There's currently about 5 acres of retention ponds on the property. There's over 250,000 square feet of education facilities, and there's currently about 460 parking spaces. So this is really just looking at the whole property, all the pieces, all the square footage, all the buildings. Next. Then if we look at the combination school by itself, next, what we actually did is we went through and we measured every building, and we categorized every building. So you see on this chart on the bottom left, broke down every category, broke down every room, calculated the square footage, and that got us to that, the total square footage that's currently on property. And then the numbers also look at your current student population of about 1,100 students. That's divided up into almost 400 at junior high and a little over 700 on senior high. There's currently 312 parking spaces on campus. And then the parent and the bus drop-off, we measure that in linear feet. So just think of it as the queuing line of parents dropping off or the buses dropping off. So that number is significant. Obviously, the longer it is, the more cars you can queue. The shorter it is, the less cars. And you also would want to try and get those cars queuing up on your property to not disturb the neighborhoods. So on the high school campus, I'm sorry, there's those 600, 700 feet area. And then the impervious area, it's kind of a boring calculation, but the civil engineer calculates how much new impervious buildings and parking lots you can add. Fortunately, this site has a lot of green space, so you have really plenty capacity to add buildings. Next. So if we look at the existing elementary parcel, again, same exercise, went through, measured all the spaces, calculated all the spaces, determined that the population currently is about 800 kids. There's 150 parking spaces on site. There's a good bus drop-off. It actually occurs along Pecan Street.
On a public street, right?
On a public street right away, that's right, man. On this here at the top. And then the parent drop-off, I believe, has been reconfigured recently and added to, so a nice, adequate parent drop-off of about 1,600 square feet. And then enough impervious area by pond capacity to add more buildings. Next. And then the vacant parcel, obviously there's not much to announce. We measured every building on the campus, but and it's 100% perfect. So, all right, so those are the existing facilities of what's there. So looking at what you had, so obviously the proposals would want to meet or exceed what is currently there would be the objective. All right, site. So the boring stuff. It's kind of like when my wife has to buy tires. You know, she hates spending money on things that just kind of don't make sense to her. But stormwater, very important. So we don't want the facility to flood. So when it does rain in Florida, where does all that water go? And then your wastewater, your sanitary system. When you flush the toilet, nobody knows where it goes, but it goes somewhere. And then parking and drop off. All right. So as we look at each one of those pieces, stormwater. The code is for school facilities, it's not super stringent, but in essence, they want the water to positively drain off the site, and they don't want the water to drain over public walkways, so you wouldn't want the kids walking through runoff puddles. And then storm water is quantified in two pieces. One is the water quality, so they're looking at that first 72 hours, that first inch of water. Where does it go? You got to hold it. And then they're also looking at if you have this big 24-year flood, 25-year flood that rains for 24 hours, that you would keep all that water on site. So that's how those are calculated. The good thing is there's two existing main ponds which are adequate in size. Up here in this top red zone, the elementary school actually shares a pond with the community, with some surrounding homes, and that pond is owned by the city, but it is adequate for what it currently does. And then over here on the bottom left, the combination school all drains to a pond that's actually owned by the school district, but again, it is adequate as well. So the good thing is that storm retention ponds are in good shape. They are being shared. You're borrowing some water from the city, and the city's borrowing some water from you. Next. And then now, so the sanitary. So as you flush the toilet, we got to make sure we do treatment. So we have to treat that sewer. So next. Currently on the property, there is a water treatment plant, which is over on the combination school side. Next. The way it is calculated, so engineers calculate square footage, students, toilets, sinks, and all, and they come up with a calculation. Currently, that plant is at its limits of the calculation level. So if you ask the engineer and he counts all the toilets, he says that's water treatment plant is at its limits. The reality is that in our review of the monthly reports, your actual water flow is less. But what that still means is that any new buildings, any new facilities, the engineer is going to have to do the calculation, and he's going to say you need new treatment. So next, currently, or fortunately, the city has a nearby water treatment plant, which is about 3/4 of a mile away. It has adequate capacity to handle additional sewage. So the proposal would be for any new facilities here to change and really abandon that water treatment plant, install a lift station. So it's actually what it says. It lifts the stuff and pushes it away. And so run at about 4,000 feet up these roads to connect to the existing system. So that's a good solution, and that would provide sewer treatment for the entire campus and for the future. Next. All right, so now parking. So we're looking at all the parking. There has been discussion that the portion of Pecan Street could be closed off, and that would allow for some parking or some bus drop-off area. But there's no discussion of any other streets being closed around the area. Orchid Street will come up in the analysis. But in all of the parking, we're looking at minimum code required parking spaces. And I'll show you a slide in a moment, and you'll recognize that code minimum is not usually what is actual, meaning that everyone has a car, everyone drives, everyone wants to drop off their kids. So usually the actual parking is greater than code minimum. But for this exercise, we're doing code minimum requirements for parking capacity. And then also we're talking about the bus drop-off and parent drop-off. Next. So as we look on this, we kind of highlighted the parking areas. Up on the top left, you'll see what is required. So this 289 is the code minimum required parking spaces for this facility. The reality is that you have 463 parking spaces. So that's good. I'm just saying that usually what's actually needed is usually above code minimum. Next. And then we talked about the drop-off. So here we have the red line and the blue line. So the red line represents bus drop-off. So buses are dropping off and they're queuing up. You can see the combination school and the elementary school up here, and then parent drop-off for combination is in the blue line. Obviously you'll see a longer blue line for elementary, meaning there's more parents coming and dropping off their elementary kids than there are the junior and the high school kids.
Could you go back, what did you say the red line?
Yeah, the red line is the bus drop-off.
Okay.
So currently, bus queuing is up here for elementary, and bus queuing is here for combination school.
And this is Pecan right here, down here?
Pecan is up here.
On the elementary school?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
All right, next. Okay, so now we get into the two evaluations. So an evaluation of a new elementary school on the vacant parcel, or an evaluation of a rebuild elementary school on the existing parcel. And in all these evaluations, we are looking at a state minimum board policy threshold for what we call a facilities list. So if you're building a new junior high, you would need 170,000 square feet. If you're building a new senior high, you would need 268,000 square feet. And if you're building a new elementary, you need 130,000 square feet. So,
can I ask a question
yes,
before
ma'am.
you go further? I was under the impression that if we did build a new elementary, that the existing elementary would become a middle school.
Yeah, yeah.
Which means the elementary would have less
he's gonna go
children,
over it
right?
all.
Yeah, I apologize, yes. I'm about to jump into those two scenarios, and so I hope I'm gonna answer all the questions in that. So, exactly right. One evaluation is a new elementary on the vacant parcel. Another evaluation is the rebuild elementary on the existing parcel. In both of these evaluations, we're looking at the long-term future possibility of population growth and tripping thresholds of a new junior high and a new senior high and a new elementary.
So the new elementary would only go through 5th grade instead of 6th, because a junior high is 7th and 8th, but a middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th. And the conversation had been a middle school and the elementary being a K through 5. So was that population taken into account?
Yeah, you'll see that, and we can adjust
Yeah.
any numbers at the end.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're all on the same.
Okay, we'll come back to that. I believe we're gonna answer that in a moment.
Thank you.
All right, so let's jump into evaluation 1. So again, as you look at these plans, you'll see the darker colored buildings. Those are proposed new buildings to get up to that threshold of that square footage we mentioned. And so evaluation A is a new elementary here, junior high here, senior high here. Evaluation B is rebuild elementary here, junior high here, senior high here. All right, so we'll dive into them individually. Next. So a proposed new elementary on the vacant 9-acre parcel. for a future population of 862 students, a code minimum 69 parking spaces. As you remember, the existing campus has 150 parking spaces. A bus drop-off, down here, if we close Pecan Street to get almost to the existing, which is over here on this portion of Pecan Street. And then a parental drop-off, you see this twisty-twirly, I think it's not Chutes and Ladders, but there's gotta be another thing, something like that. So the parental drop-offs, it's about the same, 1,500 square feet versus 1,600 square feet. And then the retention pond required because this vacant parcel doesn't have any. But probably the challenge with this parcel is the size of it. So once you get all the drop-off, when you don't have adequate parking, and you don't have the play space. So you see over here, the current play facility is about 90,000 square feet. This play facility would only be about 50,000 square feet. All right, next. So back to those thresholds. So the board policy talks about any new facility would have these minimum and maximum thresholds. So an elementary would be a minimum of 450. And then a maximum of 1,000. So your current enrollment is 805.
Of course, if it only goes to 5th grade, it's gonna be like less 150 or 125.
150 left.
How many per grade level? So
There's
that
a couple hundred usually.
projected
Yeah, let me
population
come
is
back.
not accurate.
Let me come back to that, please. Thank you. All right, next. And then so a junior high, as we mentioned, so with the elementary over there, if the population growth in the community exceeds, and if it hits the threshold of triggering a dedicated junior high, would be placed on this parcel, which would have the existing 150 parking spaces, the existing bus lane, the existing parent drop-off, and have some play space, but the challenge is that the athletic fields are on the old combination campus. And state requirement does not allow for students to cross an active road to access their play fields. So that will require the construction of pedestrian bridges.
Or closing that road, because we own both sides.
Okay, we can come back to that.
I mean,
For this,
that's
as I
correct,
mentioned, as I mentioned in the beginning, for this exercise, we looked at the closing of Pecan Street, and closing of no other roads
But we do own on both sides.
was under consideration. So we got grades as a question, and then Orchard Street as a question. All right. Back to board policy on minimums and maximums for junior highs and high. So threshold for junior high, with the minimum reaching that 750, maximum 900, high school threshold minimum 900, and then maximum 1550. So your current enrollment at junior high is a little under 400 and a little over 700 for high school. Next. So here's that pedestrian bridge. So if junior high were to be on that parcel, and junior high would need the athletic fields, state requirement doesn't allow them to cross Orchid, would need to be the construction of pedestrian bridges. Thanks. So if we look at that evaluation, there's an obvious advantage to it for disruption, that you could construct the facility without disrupting anything, possibly could be constructed in a quicker time frame because you're not dealing with an existing campus, and obviously you get all new facilities. The challenge with all new facilities is the price tag that comes with it. So this evaluation would have a price tag of about $23 million. Also, if the junior high was triggered and the pedestrian bridges were required, those are very expensive to construct and expensive to maintain. You're losing some of the parking that is on the elementary side because you're not gaining them back on the empty 9-acre parcel, and so you're kind of short on staff parking, and parent drop-off parking. Next. Just as a graphic analysis, I thought this was kind of helpful when I saw it as well. If you look at two other elementary schools in the Clay District, Shadow Lawn and Discovery Oaks, they are both on much larger parcels. So this is just graphically showing you, so that bluish purplish square there represents the 9-acre parcel compared to a standard elementary site within the district. All right, so if we look at evaluation A and we go back to the feasibility criteria of being reasonable or practical, the first one, yes, it can be built. You can put that much square footage on the site. We showed you that it fits. We showed you that the minimum code parking fits. We showed you that the queuing and drop-off area fits. However, we kind of look at the piece that what you're losing. So you're losing staff parking. You're losing a significant amount of play area and green space. I really think that there's a reason that the newer elementaries have larger parcels because the children need the green space, they need the play space, they need the area to get out and run around. And then financially, it's obviously more expensive, which I'm about to show you in evaluation B. So in conclusion, if the question is asked, a professional opinion, is it feasible to put a elementary school on the parcel? It fits, but it's not practical financially, and it's really not a good design or a layout to compress that many kids or that program on such a small parcel and ask it to do all the things that a full elementary campus should do. So because of that, not being recommended on the new parcel, we then shifted to, well, what would it look like on the existing campus? And so as evaluation B, we look at rebuilding the existing campus on the current property. So on that, you might notice that there are some existing, there's a good amount of portables here. So the new plan is that the old portables would go away. We would maintain a few for future growth. This building here in the center, which is 53 years, over 50 years old, would be demolished. This building is over 50, the gym, but we've heard that it's requested to remain. So we're constructing 3 new buildings and additional green space. So what that gets is the same population, the same parking that you have, the same drop-off that you have, but you get the additional facilities to get your total 130,000 square feet. Plus you get enhanced play areas and open green spaces.
Can I ask a question? What about the infrastructure there, like piping and all that kind of stuff? All the current facilities that are less than 50 years old are within the guidelines to remain and be operational. Mm-hmm. So the evaluation was done on the current infrastructure of sewer, stormwater, parking, and then the existing facilities that are under 50 years old would remain. Okay, but I mean, I'm thinking like I know they've had a lot of pipes break and that type of thing, so where those older facilities are that you're talking about replacing, that would be replaced as well, all of that? That's what I'm asking.
No, ma'am, just the building itself that's over 50 years would be replaced. Okay. The buildings that are... So it would be on top of that same old, okay, that's what I'm asking. Yes, ma'am, yes. Oh, well, I'm sorry. If there's any old piping, that would be replaced, anything. That's what I'm asking. Yes.
So you're thinking of the administrative building, the new building down there that had that water leak right after. How long after it was built?
Ma'am, I'm almost done. We're about on the 5-yard line, so let's run across the end zone and we'll come right back to that. All right, so that's the elementary, and then as we mentioned, we're looking at full facilities. So the next would be, so then if it hits the trigger, if the population grows, and if the junior high is triggered, placing that on the vacant parcel, it tends to work a lot better because if the closing of Pecan Street, these junior high students can then easily use the athletic fields. There's less parental drop-off required, and the bus queuing would be adequate here. So there's a lot of things that make sense for a junior high and a high to be sharing across this Pecan Street. Next. So in that analysis, it really makes sense that you take advantage of the newly configured parking on the existing elementary campus. The cost is significantly, it's almost $8 million less because you're building, I'll show you in a second, you're building 3 buildings instead of, I think, 5. And then also the connection between, the future connection of junior high and senior high seamlessly across closed Pecan Street rather than a pedestrian bridge over Orchid. And then so the reality is that building on an active elementary campus is challenging. It's not impossible, it's done all the time. We just need to be working through that season of construction to happen. Next. Here's that total cost, how we got to the 23 versus 15. So you see new buildings. Clearly a total new school on the vacant parcel is all new buildings versus using existing buildings and providing some new. There's would be all new portables for the future. This would be relocating existing portables, all new canopies for the portables, only a few canopies for the new portables, all new parking, existing parking, all new storm pond, existing storm pond, and then both of them would have a new lift station because any new building would trigger that. Next. So as a conclusion on the evaluation B, yes, that total facility can be accommodated on the existing campus, elementary campus. The new elementary can be constructed. You can utilize the existing parking, utilize the existing bus drop-off, have expanded play fields. Financially, it's more practical because it's obviously less money, and however, all of this may not be practical at this time, depending on the overall county needs. And then just to show that we did a full analysis, we did look at the senior high as well. So additional square footage fits easily on the senior high campus. There's a good amount of property. This is where those would go. So this is a crazy number. No one wanted to see this number for sure, but if you look at the long-range plans and population were to grow, and it was to trigger a junior high, and it was to trigger a senior high, and you would do a new elementary, you're looking over $70 million for all those facilities. All right, so in summary, conclusion, just a reminder, we were hired to do a feasibility study. We're looking at whether it's reasonable or practical to build a new elementary on the 9-acre vacant parcel, and to evaluate the existing parcels that you have, and then also take into account any long-term plans of population growth. And then just a reminder, we're not saying whether it should be done. We're not saying this is a complete master plan. We're not looking at the overall financial analysis of the district or any other district-wide needs, and we're not making a recommendation as to when anything should be constructed. All right. I think I said that one. All right. So, questions?
I have one, several actually, but I'm looking at the both the elementary and the junior high maps that you are showing us with several new buildings. What we were, and of course you weren't here at the time to even hear any of this, but I was under the impression we were going to look at, because it is a small piece of property, we're going to look at a smaller footprint, that would be a building that was 2 stories high. Had you considered that at all?
For which?
For both the junior high or the elementary on that smaller lot?
Yes, you'll see on the plan some of the buildings are 2 stories.
Mm-hmm.
Even on the elementary, what grade kids are allowed?
So, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade.
Must be on the first floor.
On the bottom floor.
3rd, 4th, and 5th could be on the 2nd floor. So we are showing some 2-story buildings to allow 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders on the 2nd floor.
So is that in the existing properties plan for the
Yes.
elementaries or on the
Both.
smaller?
Both. Which the existing one, we carried through with a 2-story as well to provide more play space. There's an option, if you didn't want any 2 stories, the existing campus could accommodate the full build all in 1 story and still have adequate play space, but not extra.
Was there an option for a larger building instead of 4 separate buildings on that property? So that the space in between each building
Yeah.
is actually used for, instead of
We
4
did,
separate?
yes ma'am, and so, as I mentioned, it's not a complete master plan, it's not a complete plan layout, it shows the amount of square footage. The reason we showed the thinner buildings, because it is preferred that each classroom would have a window. And so when the buildings get larger, the interior classrooms don't have windows. So, I mean, it's not desirable for the interior classrooms not to have windows.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
On the valuation B, rebuilding the new elementary on the existing site,
Mhm.
there's green space next to, building 10, I believe it is. Is that currently, there it is, the play area in the upper left-hand corner? Is that currently portables?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So those are the relocatables now, and basically building the 2-story building right there would alleviate the portables and bring that there. And
That's
then
correct.
the other 2-story building in the middle on the top would be replacing the 50-year-old building, is that correct?
It's replacing the 50-year-old building plus
Portables.
stuff, yeah.
Okay, and then there's 1-story building there. Got it.
That's correct, this one's a 1-story. I mean, the reality is, when you saw the other one that was all pink and colored, when we added up all the square footages, and we needed to get to this 130,000 square feet, that's what these 2-story, that's what these brown elements are.
Okay, so, just for clarification
Uh-huh.
then, the building at the beginning by the parking spot, the white building, that's the administration building.
Yes, ma'am.
Where is the cafeteria?
It would be,
So the
In
cafeteria, we didn't
Yeah,
designate where any program is going in the new
Okay.
build out. That would be a master plan, and we didn't do that. So
Got
this is just allocating total areas that's in the required facility list is represented on your campus somewhere.
Got it, okay. Okay. And building 12 is the current,
gymnasium.
okay.
And that's the gymnasium the high school uses also, correct? Does the high school do,
No, well, they
do their practice or something there?
They do, and after-school kinds of things, but not during the day. During the day, it's typically used for the elementary school. Of course, right now, they're serving lunch there,
For
because they don't have
6
space.
right?
But, of course, my concern is, which you mentioned in the cons, doing this while
Right.
school is going on.
Right.
I can tell you, just doing one little renovation, because I've been there when that happened,
Mhm.
was horrendous.
Right.
So I can't even imagine doing a whole school while you're trying to provide an education for our students and them being there.
Right.
I don't even wanna go there. I mean, I can't even imagine how you do that, effectively. I mean, I understand,
Yeah.
you can build, but the bottom line is while you're trying to teach them.
Well, we're doing that at times right now, aren't we?
We're doing a classroom wing, and it would be phased, I mean.
Yeah,
we
but
would
you're
be-
doing, but still, you're.
Yeah, I don't think
It is a
all 3 of these
disruption,
buildings would be
but-
built at the same time. So, depending on where, if this is more of a vacant parcel, this could be built
So
first.
instead of it being at one shot, it would be an ongoing, long-term thing.
Probably over a couple of years, yes ma'am. And school campuses around the country and even around the state have new builds happening during the school season all the time. And so it would be segregated, so it would be fenced off, it would be separate laydown areas.
Which creates another problem, getting to them if there's a safety issue or something, because we had that occur, so I'm
Sure,
familiar with those kinds of things.
there would be plans constructed between you and the construction manager There would be weekly, daily conversations with them about safety. All the workers would be carded and inspected. I mean, it would.
But getting to students when they're fenced off then too, I mean, there's a lot.
Well, the students wouldn't be in the fence.
Right, but I mean,
The fence would be the construction boundary, would be limiting the construction work beyond the fence, and then all the students would be working outside the fence.
Would they be able to do a build during the summer of, one or two of those?
You could
buildings?
begin some critical work. Usually during the summer, we would do infrastructure things, so if there's power lines or sewer lines or something, but the actual bricks and mortars of the wall could not be done in
Couldn't be done.
3 months, 2 months, yeah.
Now, we have a school right now that, St. John's Gospel Academy is basically doubling their building during the school year. They're hoping to finish it over the summer, but they start.
I'd like to talk to the people there, the staff, to see how difficult that is, though.
You should,
That's the problem.
you should.
Because I can tell you, it's not an easy task for the
No,
people
it's
that
not.
are dealing with that. So it's much better to build, when there's not anybody there.
Didn't
Because
we
you
have
can
a-
go through,
Was it Doctor's Inlet cafeteria expansion during the school year?
We started it during the summer, but I believe they finished it during the school year, correct?
yes.
And we've had
And middle
major
is also
elementary
gonna
too.
have
Times.
So we're talking an entire
Yeah.
school, I mean, a lot of construction, not
But
just
one
one
building
little
at a
spot.
time.
Mhm.
It's much more fun to watch bulldozer than it is to listen to the teacher. That's a tough act to follow.
And watching houses go up around your school, yeah, I hear you.
This was a really good presentation.
Thank you.
You seem to have covered absolutely everything things we hadn't even thought of.
Thank you.
However, all those roads could be closed for that continuous, because we own both sides, on Pecan, Orchid,
Yeah, I didn't understand when you say both sides, so, I mean, I guess that could be,
Orchid
an
and,
amendment to the study.
I mean, it could be, I
When we
mean,
began the study,
if the city was,
it
you
was
know.
understood that Orchid was off limits.
Mhm. Well, I mean, it makes it more difficult, but I mean, a new traffic pattern probably could be established, but I'm just saying, we own all that property on both sides, so,
When you say both sides, you say you own this and this?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, the nice thing about that community is they're so involved, they want to make this work. So they have no
They do.
problem,
Right.
rerouting traffic and shutting stuff down. It's just how Keystone is. They're going to work to make it work.
Sure.
And with the numbers of a middle school as opposed to a junior high, if we did a middle school at, either of those two locations, does your diagram accommodate that extra amount of children?
So the facilities list is a state recommended facilities list for an elementary, a junior high, and a high school, and that's the numbers that we use.
So it would
Right,
hold,
so we would have to
would hold the
change.
number of students, you wouldn't have to change
We
anything.
would, so even if we had, the junior high would be a middle with 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Yeah, if you did 6, 7, and 8, the total population's 535.
And K through 5 in elementary
K
would
through
be.
5 would be 668 currently, and
Which
the
is
senior
ideally
high
what
would be
we want.
718.
Okay. Thank you.
I will say this, very informative presentation, and there's a whole another report to read in addition to that. I never took into consideration the storm water and all the other things that need to be in consideration, so greatly appreciate the presentation and the report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the fact that you graduated from Orange Park High School is good. It's a good opener, it's a good opener.
Went to Montclair.
There you go. Okay.
Anything further?
Well,
Any
where we go with
discussion?
now was,
Let's-
the Keystone for our, our Ed First plan, now that we've got this information, do we want to give direction or have a discussion about the Keystone area, what we want to do? Ms. Book, do you want to share?
Well, I mean, I definitely, I think it definitely needs to be addressed. I mean, we've got, as I sent to, Bryce and to Mr. Fossa, new homes are being built. Right now, people are moving in left and right, plus a new subdivision going in. And the overcrowding that we have at Keystone Elementary is, it's a daily problem. We have issues just about every day for something. And so it definitely needs to be addressed. And we talk about fiscally responsible. If we're going to build on top of, you know, of an old facility, you know, I just think it's been there a long time, and there's an opportunity to build a new school there, and I think we should take that advantage. I know it's going to be difficult, but either option is difficult. Anyway, but I'd like us to, you know, to move forward as to, and the time frame as well. I have a lot of questions about what about the time frame, what are we looking at? And of course, I know that's not the architect's issue, but that's ours, so.
Could I ask a question, Bryce?
Sure.
What, in our 5-year plan, we currently have a new cafeteria coming to Keystone Elementary planned. When is that, when are we pulling the plug on that one?
So the design would start by September
Of this year?
this year, when our fiscal year opens up, and then construction would start in summer.
Okay, second question. Ms. Carrickas, you were bringing up the pipe issue. Are the pipes,
We would replace we wouldn't put on top. I think if what you were asking was if
That
we're
was
gonna
what I was
build right
asking.
on top of
Because even the
older
brand new
stuff,
facility,
we would
they had
replace-
problems.
Yeah, we would replace all the old piping.
is that, okay, now, when you say replacing the old piping, we've expanded the administration building in Keystone Elementary, and that's where we had the leak, is
That's
that correct? The pipe break, has that been repaired?
Yes, it was.
And have we replaced any of the piping up to this point?
I mean, anytime we do a new
No.
build, we would replace.
So with the
piping.
cafeteria, in the area that we're talking about in that facility, would any of the piping be replaced in that area with the cafeteria
building?
rebuild?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Another question, interlocal agreement with Alachua, Putnam, and Bradford. I believe in that interlocal agreement, we indicated that if the populations got beyond the limits of the school, we would then not allow any additional enrollment from that area. Bottom line, first and foremost, teachers, employees, we're not talking about any children within those areas, but that belong to any of our employees. Those children are always welcome. But over and above that would help with some of the overcrowding right now with Keystone Elementary. And I don't know if we need to be more assertive, perhaps is the word, that we need to be able to say, no, I'm sorry, we can't handle students from outside of our county at this point because we are concerned that our elementary school is overcrowded. Would that, do you have any numbers on any of that?
What's the number of students that come from that account?
I know some of that gets overridden too, sometimes.
Now,
Well,
we don't
that's
have an
any-
agreement with Alachua, it's just Putnam and Bradford, right?
Bradford.
No
Okay.
Alachua.
Bradford.
Yeah.
Just Bradford.
At the
isn't it?
elementary
We
school.
do
Just
have
And I
Bradford.
can't
kids, we do
imagine.
have kids from Putnam County coming.
Mhm.
There's 31 out-of-county students at the elementary school, 142 at the high school, and 40 at the junior high grades.
So that's a lot of students that, I'm thinking more at the elementary. So 31 students would help bring us back under that
Two
number that we need.
But those could be teachers' children too.
No.
They're not.
No,
Oh, they're
we
not?
wouldn't touch
We-
the
we-
teacher children.
Okay. No, I'm saying the
Or
31 is
employee
not.
children.
They're not.
Okay, they were just additional students, okay.
And there's also a good bunch at McCray.
I know we do.
Right, McRae's not, McRae seems to be doing well right now.
McRae needed them, that's why we opened it up, because McRae needed the
Right.
population.
Right,
You know,
right.
it's like, when we need the kids, we want them, and now
That's
we're gonna
right.
say, okay,
It's
we
kind of
don't
a
need
bad
you
thing
now,
to do
so-
that.
Well, and it's
Yeah, you
not
can't
so
yo-yo back
much
and
need or
forth.
want, it's also, those are children that we're serving. And yes, with the new open enrollment and everything, yes, we're getting money for those children. But the bottom line is that these children are being treated poorly because we're overcrowded,
Well, I mean,
then we're
bottom
not
line,
doing them a service.
it doesn't meet the controlled open enrollment requirement that we use for every single other school in this county. If there's not capacity, it should not be an open enrollment school.
And it's not.
But
It's
if
not.
we've got an
Right,
intermutual
and
agreement,
so that may
it's a
be-
Right, but they're two
variation of-
different things, open
I
enrollment.
understand that, but
and-
the principle's the same, those kids are not zoned for that school, right?
And it was
But
a
that's
give and take
something-
where they took some of our students, I think, from the
Right.
Kingsley Lake area.
And this has been in existence for, gosh, I don't know how
A
many
long
years.
time.
Since before I got on the board,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
it's been renewed repeatedly.
But it doesn't, I mean, that seems like a good first step if we've got a critical situation at Keystone Heights Elementary that needs to be addressed as soon as possible.
And that's
That's a
something
good
we
first
can
step.
communicate with the other school
Right.
districts as well. It's not something that, I mean, it's not going to go just to the parents, it's going to go to school districts to work with them as well.
That's
It
what
still
the
doesn't
policy-
answer the question of the aging facility though.
Well, we've got aging facilities all over the county. That's, I mean, we
Yes.
experienced that with Orange Park
Mine has,
Elementary's
my area
graduation.
has 513 years of experience. in
There you go.
public schools, so.
The other thing that I'm concerned about, and I've not heard this discussed from the Keystone side of things, is that if we were to take the junior high students out of that high school, what's that going to do to the programs for both the junior high and the high school? And the reason, and this came back with an article in the newspaper recently from the Florida High School Athletic Association. And they were about to change the rules for junior, senior high schools, and saying that junior high students would not be able to participate in high school sports. And they didn't change the rule. And they specifically mentioned Keystone Junior, Senior High School as being one of those schools that it would affect. And I started thinking about that and I thought, okay, we take some opportunities away from the students. Is that necessarily to an advantage to those children? Then looking at the high school, if we're going down to under 1,000 students for a high school, we're not going to be able to offer the same academic programs or extracurricular activities to that high school in as an efficient way as we can right now with both of them together. And that concerns me. That concerns me for the students. From an education perspective, I understand they're older facilities. I understand that buses do need to drop off. I sat in the parent pickup line at Argyle recently, waiting on a retirement party after school. And as I'm sitting there on the double yellow line going down the center of the street, and people are just driving down the left-hand side of the road, and I'm going, oh my gosh, you know, if a bus comes this way or if another car comes this way, and everybody just sort of gets it. And I talked to the SRO at the school and I was like, oh my God, and he goes, I know. He goes, we've not had any accidents, you know, we're all knocking on wood. But just seeing that happens in a lot of our schools. And, you know.
It's also a
people-
disadvantage because if there were two schools, they would have 4 administrators at a junior high and 4 at a high school. So they currently have 4 over a junior, senior high school. So the staffing issues of having to cover things, like right now, they're down 2 administrators.
Mhm.
I mean, they have 2.
So I think
So we
that,
need more administrators as well, yeah.
yeah, I think that even a bigger consideration would be the actual policy itself. That even if you went with a K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, if you did that, you'd wind up with 668, the elementary K-5, which would be perfect. It's great.
Yes.
Mhm.
But then when you look at the junior high configuration, even if you went 6-8, it'd be 535, which wouldn't even meet the current board policy relative to numbers of students. And then the high school would then drop to 718, which would fall below the minimum for high school. So both schools wouldn't meet the requirement, which I think that Mr. Caffrey pointed out in that. So yeah, there is that issue with services between them. But the reason why that's in the board policy, and what the board policy actually says, is to maintain fiscal responsibility. That's why they established those, whenever that policy was written, they established those thresholds. In other words, you can't support a school financially if you don't have X number of students. And so that's what he pointed out in that, and the numbers bear out of 535, 6 through 8, even if you went that way.
And what's the threshold?
I think it's 750
Was that for,
for junior high.
and is that the
But
same
if you
number
did,
for
like
middle
we
school?
talked about, either the bridge over and made those, combined those two, meaning a junior high and a high school there, then that could be one continuous part there. And then the elementary would go in that empty.
Yeah, I think the study would focus more on forming 3 different.
I know it did, but he
Different
talked, but
schools.
what I'm saying, if you did, when he was talking about closing pecan and doing a junior high and a high school, you could just do it the other way.
And have them be one school, but not
Yes,
two separate
Just
rooms.
have them
That's
separated.
exactly right. Do it that way.
Duval does that with like a 6th grade center at one.
And then you would have the
junior
gym on the
highs.
the gym would be at the old one for the junior high, so all of that would be there too.
So you're saying that it would still be Keystone Heights Junior, Senior High
Yes,
School?
but you could be,
But
you
you'd
could
still have 2 separate administrators. I don't know that we would be
Well, no,
seeing
you
that
would
way.
keep the one set of administrators and they would manage
Yeah.
all
They would have-
facilities.
or have one, a building administrator over
Which
the junior high.
they're walking in
high.
different buildings anyway, so just, they would, you know.
But we
'cause
don't
they would
have a
all the same
crowding
school
issue
number.
at the junior,
At
senior
the
high
Junior,
school.
Senior High
So it
School.
doesn't make sense to build buildings for that when you have a crowding issue at the elementary school. I would think that's where you wanna add
Yeah.
classroom space, not for junior, senior high.
Keep
I-
in mind, they said that there's 2 developments going in, one that had 78 homes and the other that had 200.
One
So
of them is a
200
retirement community.
It's
as I
not.
recall.
No, it's
No,
not. That's
no.
what they
Originally
was going to
Oh,
be,
I
it's
see.
not.
It's not that now.
But that's,
Normal homes for families, so
That's correct.
278 new homes are going in, so if we don't do something, we're gonna have to redistrict kids that live right there by the school
And that
out
was
to
the question I
McRae or
had.
somewhere else.
well, quick question. You said 278 homes, and that would be approximately how many students is that? I always,
40 to 50 kids.
so 50 students,
40 to 50 elementary.
elementary. So let's say we've got our current 800, so let's say we go up to 850, 900. What is, with a new build on the cafeteria? How many students would we then be able to, because we've heard the basic presentation, that cafeteria size then gives us
We
the
would
number
build
of
a
students.
full-size cafeteria,
Which would mean how many students could we then handle supposedly at Keystone Heights?
for a lunch period. It's-
Or enrollment?
Total.
I mean, it would
Enrollment.
support 862 students, which is what our facility list.
So that would cover
requires.
those 2.
Right, we would build a
Subdivisions.
full-size cafeteria.
Mm-hmm.
So inside the presentation itself, it says there will require 2,000 homes to meet the high school threshold, 6,000 homes to meet the junior high threshold of new buildings. So I see
Well, that's for a new construction and a new development. You can't compare that. There's 6,000 homes in Keystone. There's probably more than that, so you
so
can't compare that.
6,000 additional new homes in order to bring it past the board policy threshold.
Well, that would be if we didn't already have a junior, senior, right?
Right.
Because we're
so-
already housing those kids in the high school.
I think what the study was trying to show was that the feasibility of having a separate junior high, a separate high school, is financially not practical. But he was also trying to point out, what would it take to make it practical?
I don't agree with that at all, saying we need 6,000 new homes in that area just to build a junior high when
No,
there's
that's not
already
what he's
existing.
saying. He's
That's what you
saying-
just said.
That's not what I just said.
That's what I
What
heard.
Okay, the interpretation then of what I just said was that when he did the study, it appears to me that what he tried to do was also take a look at what would it take for us to reach the board minimum number of students. How many homes, new homes, would you have to build in order to reach that threshold? And on one of the slides, he listed 2,000, new homes, new construction there, in order to generate the number of students needed for you to reach the minimum board policy as to the number of students at that
And how
site.
many junior high students do we have right now? You say 5?
397.
397, and we need how many for?
That was for 7th and 8th grade.
Right, so if you
Right.
incorporate the
Seven.
6th graders into
That was just
that.
So
two
if you
grade
incorporate the 6th graders, it's 535, and darn, I can't find the slide now.
750.
750 is the,
2,000 new
policy.
homes to meet the high school threshold, 6,000 new homes to meet the junior high threshold. That's under the assumption of,
For 200 kids, we need 6,000 new homes.
From-
Calculation that we
from
provide.
397 to 750.
But it would be a 6th, 7th, and 8th, so it would actually be, what was the number you said, 583?
535.
535 to get up to
but our minimum is
700,
750.
Right.
750. How many homes do we need to get from 535 to 750? Surely not 6,000.
Oh, it'd be less than that, but even if it was half, it would be 3,000.
But what, Bryce, what's the number?
I need some time to work on that for you. I mean, I can
Every
easily do
100
that.
homes generates how
It's
many
about
kids?
20, every 100 kids, home generates about 20 elementary kids. It generates probably around 16 high school kids and about 8 junior high kids. That's the number.
But you're thinking it's only
that
7th and
20
8th, so it would be skewed a
A
little
little
bit.
bit more, sure, maybe 10.
So I think,
And they
I
can
think
only
the
build about
point-
70 homes per year, per developer.
The junior high school population right now is 1,100 kids. That's 7 through 12. And when you think about like Oakley High School, there's like 2,500 kids there, and that's only, 9 through 12.
It's a
It's a smaller
different
school, so
community.
that's what's driving the junior, senior high model. And that's typical across Florida. There's a lot of other junior, senior highs in the
Right.
rural type areas, just because that's what you have to do to run the school from a business standpoint.
Mr. Fossa, you are our contact with the county in projections of new development. What is we've got the 2 that we've already mentioned, that have been on the books for a while. What other new development is coming up in Keystone Heights?
I sent you an email.
You did.
I did.
And there was the email that you sent me was a listing, because it hadn't sold, and it's been on the books for 600 days.
According to the city council, it has, it's all of that. I'm just telling you.
I get-
I'm
yes,
just
ma'am.
telling
Well,
you.
the mayor even said that at our.
Yeah, she said
When
it.
she came and spoke at our meeting, the mayor said that. permits
Keystone is
have been
still
pulled.
part of Clay County, and everything still has to go through the Clay County
Right, and I've seen.
Commission, so we see everything that comes through there.
And
So-
I don't- And I would get any impact
I
fees
don't
that
think
come
that's
through,
right.
and I don't
They
see
go
any.
through the city, they go through the city of Keystone to get approval of their permits.
Any building
But we
has to
still
go
see
through.
it
We still
in
see
Clay
it.
County.
So have you gone down to the city of Keystone and looked at the permits that have been pulled?
I've gotten 0 impact fees from them, so that's what drives those. I would see an impact fee that would come through there. And whatever Keystone would give me as well.
The
I
impact
mean,
fee is not until the lights are turned on.
Yeah, until they
Sure, but
turn the
I've
power
also
on.
talked
They've
to
already-
the city manager, and I've also spoke with Mayor Lake, and I'm looking for what they've given me. And one was the one that you showed me.
Right.
That's the
Which
one
was
that
a
Ms.
list.
Slade sent me,
And
and I mailed to you.
and they keep telling me that it's going to go through their planning commission, and it hasn't. And I sit on the Green Cove Planning Commission, and I sit on the Brownies Planning Commission, I sit on Orange Parks Planning Commission. So now, because we're talking so much about this, I've reached out and spoken with Keystone and de facto on their planning commission, and these are supposed to come, but they haven't come, haven't seen them. And I'm not lying, I mean, they send me what they send me, and right now they're saying these are coming. And I see that a lot, especially in the county, say, oh, we have a new development coming. I'm like, okay, I'll see it when I believe it when I see it. And that does happen, they'll tell me they're gonna build something maybe out near Lake Asbury. It doesn't show up. And then when it does come to the DRC, then I can see it. So right now, she says, yes, we're planning on having something. Haven't seen it yet, and they haven't come forward with me and said, here's the plan, this is what we're fixing to do.
How many homes are within that particular group, do you know?
I think she said about 250.
250. Okay,
But
but not,
I haven't seen it.
so 250.
She told me that,
homes.
and I'm waiting for them to
Right.
give me that information, so I can enter it into our database so we can plan.
Okay, well, keep us posted when
Yes, ma'am.
you find out about it, thank you. Well, obviously, we don't have to make a decision on anything right now, we need more information,
That would
but
be like outdoor
um,
sports fields.
I just think that we need to do something in Keystone. Something other than expanding the cafeteria.
Yes.
Mary, you're making faces over there.
Well, I'm not making faces at you, I'm sorry, I'm concerned because we keep pushing this down the road and saying we need to, you just said, we need to make some decisions,
We
but we
do.
don't need to make some decisions now, and
Then
it's
let's
like,
make a decision
wait a
now.
minute,
We need
you
to
know,
do
that's-
something about it.
I mean, we're not,
I would make this suggestion or recommendation, you just got 120 pages worth of material.
And
How
you
about we
really
take-
can't make a decision in a workshop.
How about we take a little
Right.
time,
Right, correct.
take a
Yeah, I
look
wanna
at
look it
that
over. I need
and
to
see
look.
that. I mean, I think the bigger, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is it's about financial resources among all district schools and what we should do in relation to all district schools. And I think that, maybe it's my role to bring that forward and just say it, and so that's really what it comes down to. When you take a look at all of our schools, all of our schools have needs other than the brand new schools. Keystone certainly has needs, I'm not denying Keystone has needs, okay? I think the feasibility study did a great job of kind of narrowing the field, so to speak. When I come out of this presentation and I see this presentation, a couple things, come to my mind related to that. And of course, there's always the danger of saying something and then people dislike you for what you say. But I was always raised to just call it the way you see it, right? So when I looked at that presentation, I saw that, I thought that the number of students to build separate facilities for junior high and high school doesn't appear to be there based on the presentation that was given, okay? We could disagree with that and what we want for Keystone and what we envision Keystone happening and all of that, and I get all of that. I'm just merely giving my interpretation of what I just heard, okay? There is no doubt, I've been to Keystone Elementary, there's no doubt that the facilities need to be updated. No doubt about it. How to do that and how to do that in relation to everything else that we have as a district need requires more consideration than this discussion. When we look at growth, it doesn't appear like growth is happening in that part of the county. I know we want to say different. I'm just saying it the way it's been presented to me. When you look at total overall growth, I think we looked at 26,000. Here's the danger of saying numbers, right? Somebody will say
27.
you quoted the wrong number, right? So I think you'll get the gist of what I'm trying to say, even if I'm inaccurate on the actual number. Roughly 26,000 in a 10-year time span. And so far the district has done a couple of things, and I'm just kind of recapping for everybody. We've already started the process of School A to open in August of 2023. It's on the 5-year plan. It'll do several things for the district out on 315. It will, among other things, relieve some of the theoretically, once you guys decide the attendance zone, of PACE, the issue with Patterson, and that whole scenario, as well as the growth that's happening in the Lake Asbury area. Roughly 8,600 homes currently there. I did most of those subdivisions out in that area. I've already started. They've already pushed the dirt. They've already started building. It's not like it's not going to happen. The question is, how fast can they build those homes, especially where the expressway comes across. Within your 5-year plan, you also have School A, which is scheduled to open up in August of 2024. And then from there, the projection out becomes more challenging. So when I talk about this topic, I talk about what's definite, right? It appears School A is definite. You've already approved that. okay? Not only through the plan, but you also approved the first step, the architectural, 2 months ago, maybe 3, I don't remember. I'm not good at time frames, hate to tell you that, getting older. So you've already approved that. In the 5-year plan is School A, right? So I would call that School R, gonna happen in 2020 and 2023. School A, most likely to happen, right? Because it hadn't had the formal vote on the architectural piece of that to start the process going. The other pieces of that are projected longer, which makes it tougher, right? So originally, how about a little known fact, or I'll bring this back to your memory, School R was originally supposed to start 2008. Well, we all know what happened in 2008. I'm not wishing an economic recession or anything on any of us, but things change. So you can plan, and you can probably get a 2, 4-year, 5-year time frame, and then after that, you still have to plan, but you're not as accurate, or things may happen over time from there. So just looking at growth, that's a quick 2-minute growth presentation for the district. I think it's all gonna come down to, in this particular case of Keystone, no doubt the facilities need to be updated. The question is how, when, and how much, right? Because when you look at the total financial package of junior high, elementary, and all that, it was 72 million. I think that when I first saw that, I of course, gasped a little bit, like everyone else. Like, how do we afford all of our obligations? So, I would suggest that one, we digest this, give further thought as to direction that we should give. When we do the 5-year plan, that's really the time that those adjustments would come in after the discussion would happen among the board about when and how. Originally, when Ed first came about, and I know this likes to be pointed out, it talked about a school in Keystone 2 to 5 years. Well, we've gone 6 months, so we're not, I know there's an urgency to discuss this topic, get this topic resolved, and I agree, it needs to be resolved. And at the same time,
Just go down too far, too long.
And at the same time, I also wanted to put it in perspective. Like where we are. We're not out of our time frame of what we said we were going to do originally. And of course, this gives new focus and new guidance based on what we heard from a third-party individual. So that's my take on it.
Thank you.
I have one more thing I'd like to add. I'm thinking about the plan that they have for the elementary, if they were to build a new elementary school on that 9 acres. And again, that it was separate buildings. And Duval County has Chimney Lakes Elementary, where my kids went to school. And it's a square with a courtyard in the center. So it's a downstairs for kindergarten and first, and it's one hallway. The front hallway is administrative and the media center. The left side is kindergarten and first. The right side is second and third. Upstairs is fourth and fifth. The back is the cafeteria / gymnasium, an art room, the kitchen, and it's a nice size with a big courtyard in the center so that every room has a window, and it's an area where I think they had tables, lunch tables, and they could use it for special events, and then they had a nice play area. If you looked at something like that, it could be a smaller footprint, which would give you more space for the play area, because you said the playground area would be smaller and maybe more parking. Is something like that, cost-wise, would it be more expensive or less expensive than the 4 buildings that you had? And I know I'm off the cuff giving that to you. So just an idea, something
Just
like
off the
that.
top of your head.
Less
No, that's
expensive
fair.
to do one structure as
No,
opposed to 4 structures.
Yeah, as opposed to individual structure, and the space between them and all that you have.
Our cost analysis is based on square footage. And so in a general sense, if you're building a building and it's 100,000 square feet and it's another one's 100,000 square feet, they're gonna be similar in cost. So I think for this study, the magnitude is gonna be similar. Yes, if you did one giant box, you would reduce your exterior walls, you would ultimately reduce the cost. But it would be reducing it by maybe 5 to 10%, not half. And then the scenario you're discussing, yes, we can do a what we call a donut style scheme, push the building to the perimeter, have a large open court in the center. It's possible that it would give you a little bit of extra space, but if you looked at the site, 9 acres versus another site of 27 acres, I mean, it's almost a third of the size. And then you saw the parent drop off, links, snaking around there. You saw that it didn't have parking spaces for staff. So back to the point of, could we shove it in there? Yes. At the end of, would it really be a thriving and whatever positive word, facility for the next 50 years? We don't think so.
Of course, there's also parking if you close Pecan right over there by the baseball field as well. There's a lot of parking right there.
Sure, you could move the elementary square footage into
That's
the
right.
junior high combo space.
Right, so some of that parking area there that's used, that is parking.
Then you have to find a place for the bus drop off.
Ideally, we would want to eliminate any portables too, so.
Well, the scheme that we have eliminated them. I think we have 6, that's for future growth, so, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me ask again, sorry.
My concern is going in and putting in a new cafeteria and then down the line saying, oh, now we're gonna do this, I feel like you gotta, think some long term, because, and redoing the cafeteria, the problem is that cafeteria is probably be redone 3 or 4 times, and every time is the same problem, there's not enough space, so.
It is very small.
And the acreage that it's currently on is small too,
Right.
like the 9 acres.
Well, we know we have those 2 schools, and of course, that's the priority for the new growth coming in. And we're not saying, eliminate that, but in our 5-year facility plan, our Ed First plan, I'd like to see Keystone moved up. And more information will come in from Mr. Fossa, permits or whatever, and it sounds like we're looking at, it wouldn't even be feasible until 2025, because 2023 is R, 2024 is A. Yeah, so we're looking at if the need is definitely there, then that should be the next one, or I think it should be the next one. It's just a matter of deciding, do we want that 9-acre piece to be the junior high? Would that be, or to be the elementary? I mean, either way, something's gonna have to be done to the existing elementary to bring it up to par for what it needs.
Yeah, I think it's a matter too of also looking at the entire district in order to make that determination. There's no doubt that renovation or something needs to be done at the elementary school. There's been some things that have been done, recently there with their admin building, their parking lot, and I saw like when I walked the campus that day, whatever day we were all out there. I saw some new mixed in with some really old.
Really old.
Right, and so it was kind of like a mixture of buildings out there, and so I did when first time I ever pulled up as superintendent into the new parking lot area and went into the admin building, I thought, this is pretty good, and then you have to walk to the other side to see the other side of it, right?
And the first
So
building you see is 60 years old almost.
Yeah.
And
they call the new building one that was built in the 80s. That's called the new building.
So, I think a lot of good discussion today, a lot of things brought to light in this presentation that'll lead us to future direction. I feel like we're at a good spot in this, and I realize the passion that we have for this, and definitely need it. But I think we have to all look at the whole big picture also at the same time. So this makes it a really challenging conversation, and I think there's going to have to be more conversation, that goes down the road, but I'm proud of the conversation that we've had so far, relative to it, because I realize the difficulty, of this particular topic, and so I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Moving on to the rest of our workshop. Mr. Bickner, have you got anything to add?
I do
Bring
not.
up, whatever. No?
Thank you.
Ms. Gilhousen?
Nothing new.
Ms. Clark?
Thank you for straightening me out on the location of Pace and AMI. When you talk about swim and rolling hills, are we talking Duval or Clay? I'm just, anyway, no. I think there's a lot more information that we need to discuss Keystone. And we have to remember when we're talking 110% capacity, that could be 30 children for Keystone, but it could be 100 students for Patterson. So we have to look at what's going to be best for everyone. And this with programs for the junior high, I mean, that's, if we're really talking about the children being the number one, we have to make sure that our focus is that they can get all the right programs and in our changes as we determine it. So that's it for me. Nothing important.
Ms. Kirkus?
And nothing.
Ms. Bullock? On that note?
So if I could,
Whoa!
I notice on the agenda,
Yes,
it
sir.
says superintendent's comments, and we skipped that part.
You've been talking this entire time. Do
So-
you have additional comments?
So AMI is going to be located at 1107 Martin Luther King Boulevard in Greenfield Springs.
Oh, okay.
That is the location of that. That's my comments.
Thank you. So they're bringing it into town
Oh,
versus?
wait.
Yeah.
Dr. Leguccio, what is it you wanted me to remind?
Oh, yes, communication went out this week about,
Oh, paychecks, yeah.
paychecks, accounts payable, moving forward after July, any travel, direct payment to you will be automatically deposited into your bank accounts rather than paper checks.
So rather than a separate check.
I don't get to see my signature.
No, I didn't know if the communication went out to board members.
No, we
so-
didn't.
and
I
know you
don't think
guys
I
did.
get that. No, we didn't.
No,
get
so
that.
I wanted to
Thank
make
you.
sure that you all are aware, so you're not surprised that you're not getting a check in the mail. It's automatically going to deposit into the bank account that your payroll checks are being deposited into.
And then will that be, and it'll basically show as a deposit from, got it. Is there any definition on it as to what it's there for? I mean, if we just start seeing additional money come in for whatever.
Well, it'll be mostly like travel checks
Yeah.
primarily. And any reimbursement that's due to you outside of payroll.
Got it, got it. I need to say one more thing, I forgot also. Welcome back, Nicole. It's so good to see you here. It's good to see you, we enjoyed John.
Is she
Don't get me
enjoying?
wrong, we truly enjoyed John,
She's
but
enjoying all that sleep she's getting.
that's right, you know, you just go to bed a little bit earlier in the evening, you'll get through it, so. On that note, we are adjourned.